Course in Miracles, also referred to as ACIM or the Course, is a self-study curriculum, spiritual in nature, that sets forth an absolute non-dualistic metaphysics, yet integrates the principle of forgiveness, emphasizing its practical application in daily living. A Course in Miracles was originally written in a collaborative venture by Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford. In the beginning, the voice, whom Schuckman referred to as Jesus, described them as scribes. According to Kenneth Wapnick, editor of A Course in Miracles, Jesus was a symbol of God's love and not the historical Jesus of Nazareth. The teachings of A Course in Miracles have been supported by such mainstream commentators as Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, and Marianne Williamson, and are additionally supported by countless New Thought churches, such as Centers for Spiritual Living and the Association of Unity Churches. Currently, over 2 million volumes of A Course in Miracles have been published worldwide. Additionally, A Course in Miracles has been translated into 19 different languages, with 8 new translations underway.
The source of all of our discomfort is a projection of our guilt. That's why we're so uncomfortable. There's a line in the Course that says, of all the many causes of your suffering, you never thought your guilt was among them.
This whole game that we call life is just an illusion, just a projection of what's going on within. And all the answers that we're seeking are within.
What we are learning is to undo our illusions of separation, to expose the reality of the God Self that is pre-existent eternally in every sentient being. And it sums that up in the most beautiful, simple words. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.
I thought I knew what love was when I married Alan. Everything about him fascinated me. I ached when I had to leave him. I couldn't wait to see him when he came home. But now it's just like every other relationship I've ever had. I just wish I had some understanding of what my life is all about.
What it's really about is changing your perception, looking at the world differently, and undoing the ego. According to the Course, that is a fast way to get home. The Course doesn't say it's the only way to get home.
Course in Miracles is a message, if you will, into the dream. It presents us with two different thought systems, two completely diametrically opposed thought systems.
It doesn't focus on love, it doesn't focus on truth, it doesn't focus on forgiveness in the usual sense of the word. It really focuses on the resistance we have to accepting the love. And if we don't let go of the resistance, nothing we do, no matter how many times you study the Course or any other spirituality, we will inevitably fail. So what the Course does is unveil for us our secret wish to be unfairly treated. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated.
The journey really involves undoing all of the illusion that we think is real. The process involves facing everything that we're given in the moment. So it's not really about studying anything. It's not really about acquiring more knowledge, spiritual knowledge. What I found personally was it's just about unlearning. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's about unlearning everything that we think is real. And then it's from letting that happen, allowing that to occur naturally, that we find out that what is really real is love.
And people say, well, where is God in all of this?
When A Course in Miracles uses language like Jesus and Holy Spirit, they're only symbols to guide us to choosing the right mind. There isn't literally a Jesus or Holy Spirit talking to us. But this works well because it allows people to feel as if they have an older brother or separate person speaking to them, since we generally relate to ourselves as people.
And that's what I love about the Course. It says, this is what you did. This is what you thought you did. This is how you made it up. And we're going to use everything that you think and everything that you've made as a means to wake you up to who you really are.
For most of us, what are we doing out there? Well, we're just experiencing a great deal of pain until we've had enough. And that's okay.
So therefore, nothing that you are doing has to be in conflict with your spiritual awakening. You know, if you were an astrologer, just because you're into the Course in Miracles don't mean you can't use that. If you're a bricklayer, you still can lay bricks and still wake up to who you really are. It's about now using those things to remind yourself of the truth and of your connection to the Holy Spirit.
A Course in Miracles is unlike other spiritual paths in that it's not trying to teach us to be more loving. It's not trying to teach us to be kinder specifically, to change anything about our behavior in the world. What it's teaching us to do is actually quite the opposite. It's teaching us to begin to see really how unloving we are, how much we want to blame other people, how angry we really are.
Listen to me, Alan. We need to talk about what we're doing in this marriage.
I care about you too much to listen to you right now, Kate.
Oh my God, you are so selfish. Don't you want to make me happy?
Kate, my dream for you is to be happy, but you're never gonna find your happiness in me.
Don't tell me your philosophical garbage. I need you to tell me you care about me. Sometimes I don't even know why I married you, Alan.
We're not getting anywhere with this right now, Kate. I think we need to step back and cool off.
The world is an outer picture of an inner condition. There really is no world out there. Much in the same way when you dream at night, there's nobody in dreamland infringing on you as the main character of your dream.
But the whole idea of this course can be said as being that it leads us on a journey from the mindless to the mindful. The world is a place of mindlessness because we think we're brains and bodies, so we don't know we have a mind. And if we don't know we have a mind, how can we possibly change it? So what Jesus does in this course is lead us on this journey from the mindless, which is the world of bodies and where we think we are, to the mind.
The Course tells us that the outside world is an outward picture of an inward condition.
Forgiveness is the process of undoing the judgments we have made in the past. And as you allow yourself to do nothing but that, just to withdraw the judgments that you have made, you will uncover an awareness in your mind of a self, yourself, that you have never dreamed existed.
That's the beginning of the end of seeking. We start to realize that there is nothing out there. We couldn't find anything in the world because essentially there is no world. And the Holy Spirit begins to teach us that and to show us that literally the world begins to disappear.
The payoff ultimately is that it will teach you the truth of who you are.
Most of us spend this life in this dream trying to fix the dream when the only game in town is just to wake up out of it. And it's only when we wake up out of it that we recognize that all is well, all was always well. There is nothing to fix. And also there's nothing to be guilty of. All that we need to do is just gently wake up. And we can do that by listening to the voice within, which is always going to be talking to us and telling us to just detach. Right? Jesus taught us, yeah, okay, dude, you're in this dream, you're in this world, but don't be of it. Right? And that's the key right there, is to detach from this.
Well, there's nothing outside of the mind, so there's nothing to be found out in the world except what's in the mind, because the world is an outer picture of what's happening within you. The Course says the world is an outer picture of an inner condition.
The Course teaches us that reality is perfect oneness, and that's the definition of heaven. It's an awareness of perfect oneness.
There's not a world, then what is going to become of me? What am I really?
If it's all an illusion, what are we experiencing here?
I think the answer is obvious when one considers why we're here. We all have chosen to be born so that we could prove that the ego is right and God is wrong. We have chosen to be born in a body because that's what makes separation real. My body begins and ends here, your body begins and ends there. And there's a gap between us. Some of the greatest brains throughout history that tell us the world is real and study the world, etc. We all have a tremendous investment in preserving the integrity of our individual self. To be told that the world is an illusion, to be told, moreover, that we're not even here because there's no here to be in, means that I don't exist. And that's the terror that strikes in everyone's heart. That's what the ego sought to avoid by making up a world and then making up individual bodies. It strove to make us mindless. So if I am mindless, I cannot return to my mind and choose the teacher who will say all this is an illusion, it never happened, versus the teacher that says the separation did happen, it's not an illusion, and besides that, there's now a material universe that proves that the world, that the separation is not an illusion.
One of the most difficult things for all students of the course or any teaching of non-duality is the initial understanding that the physical world that we see and seems so solid and so complex and so awesome at times is not the reality of God. And we are told in the Course in Miracles that it is an illusion that we have created as a backdrop to support our belief in change, in contrast, in duality.
You're imagining that you're separate from the truth of what you are. You're imagining that something can be separate from awareness.
And I think you're making it real when you're afraid of it. I think you're making it real when you judge it. The form world is neutral. It's like the Course says, everything that we see is neutral. Everything we see is neutral, but we don't have any neutral thoughts about it. You know, so as far as I'm concerned, everything here is neutral. I just see no neutral things. I'm either seeing you right now from a perspective of, you know, we are connecting right now, or that we're separate in some way. So I don't have a neutral reaction to you or what you're saying.
Course in Miracles tells us that everything, absolutely everything, is happening within our mind, which means that your mind is not in your body. Your body is in your mind. Your body isn't even in the world, because the world is in your mind. Absolutely everything is in your mind. The Course tells us that there is nothing outside of us, and that's what we must ultimately learn.
Nothing's working. Not with Alan, not with anything in my life. In one instance, I want Alan to hold me in his arms, and in the next, I feel like pushing him away. I searched most of my adult life for the perfect relationship, and I thought I had found it with Alan.
What Jesus does, and this is the whole meaning of forgiveness and how we get from the body back to the mind, is that whenever we're upset about something, his answer to us is that what you're seeing outside is a projection of a mind you never knew existed, the inward condition. And so if you follow me along, he says to us as our teacher, day in and day out, I will help you realize that every single thing that upsets you in the world at large is a projection of your need to escape responsibility for your mind's decision for the ego. And over again, he tells us, as he told Helen repeatedly, choose me. Choose me as your teacher, for that will be the road to peace. The other road, as King Lear says, that way madness lies. So anything that upsets you outside now becomes part of our classroom that Jesus as our teacher helps us realize is a projection of a decision our mind has made. And because our mind has made it, we could choose again. And as one workbook lesson says, we could see peace instead of this.
Whatever is true is eternal and cannot change or be changed. Well, that narrows it down a little, because there's nothing in the world of impermanence, the world of time and space that we see, that endures forever. And so what we need to understand is that there is a common thread to all of these philosophies that would say that by definition, if something shifts or changes, which it would include energy, then it's not true. And what is true is that which is eternal and in fact never changes.
It's all upside down. This whole game is upside down. We think that this life is real. This life isn't real. It's just a dream. It's an illusion. I think that I am this reality called Tomas Vieira. No, I'm not. This is just the body. This is just the suit that I'm wearing in this act of the play called life. That's not who I am. I'm not contained within this body.
You know, there aren't any other minds. There's really just one. It looks like there are, you know, probably 6 billion people out there and 6 billion minds out there that need to be saved. There's really just one. The Course teaches that all the rest depends on you. I don't think I like that idea too much at first.
The Course says, as do many quantum physicists, that time is an illusion, that linear time is not what we think. But the Course also says something more. It says not only is time as an illusion, but the whole expanse of time that seems to span billions and billions of years has all already happened. And not only that it's an illusion, but it's an illusion that has already happened. It all happened in one instant. It's like in one instant, in fact, the only time the Course uses this metaphor, in one instant, the carpet of time rolled out, which is the entire world of time and space, the whole cosmos, not just Earth. The whole cosmos rolled out in one instant, and that same instant rolled back and was gone. Which means that everything happened, all of the ego thoughts and all the permutations and combinations, all the possibilities that could ever conceivably happen as fragmentary shadows of the tiny mad idea of being separate from God. All of those occurred in one instant. And because we have a split mind, the right mind offers a correction for every single time there was a thought of separation, no matter what the form was. So for example, a good analogy is that when we are asleep at night having a dream, we are asleep in our bed and our dream takes us to all kinds of places in the world, and all kinds of fanciful, impossible things happen. Yet we never leave our bed, never. Unless we're sleepwalkers, I guess. But typically we don't leave our bed. And so while we are asleep, we think we are in these exotic places doing these exotic things or terrible things. Our body reacts physiologically as if things were being done to us. Yet we open our eyes and awaken and say, thank God it was only a dream. And we realize there's nobody with us and we're still in our bed, in our bedroom, in our house or apartment. Nothing has happened. Well, that's the point Jesus teaches us in A Course in Miracles. Nothing has happened. We just are dreaming that we are here.
Why do you let your friends come here and eat all our food? That was the last banana in this house. Living with you is like being trapped. You don't care, you don't listen. Why don't you and your friends appreciate all my efforts?
Since our perception is based upon the belief that there's something wrong with us, the most natural inclination we have is to project that belief onto others. And the projection of our belief is called judgment. Making judgments of others to hide the fearful implications that judgment would seem to have upon us.
So things seem to get worse as we work with the Course because we were never aware of how bad things really were in our minds. And so as these veils are lifted through the practice of forgiveness, which again brings the problem back within, then we suddenly are aware of what's going on inside, which, as painful as it is what motivates us finally to choose against it and realize that just as my attack thoughts of others were made up, the guilt that I have harbored and cherished within myself, that's made up too. And then the whole thing disappears in a light of blazing glory and the ego's gone.
Today, Alan gave me a book. It's called A Course in Miracles. I was furious when I first unwrapped it. I've heard everyone from Deepak Chopra to Oprah talk about it. I wanted to throw it into the trash, but I decided to open it. The first sentence I read was, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." I began to cry. I realized I was the one trying to stay separate from everyone else.
Those two thought systems that we carry around in our mind, oneness, separation. That thought system of separation, when we're in it, does not want you to give up this belief system. That belief system has created your identity. It's who you think you are.
William Blake said long ago, don't believe the lie. Right? Everything in this world is a lie. Right? There's a line in the Course that says, nothing so blinding as perception of form. You should not believe anyone who comes from the position that the world is real, bodies are real, and bad things happen two bodies. If someone says that to you, don't listen to them, because they are laboring under a psychotic delusion and are hallucinating and thinking that there's a world out there in which people get hurt. There is no world out there. It would be like if I had a dream tonight about you, and I saw you the next day, and in that dream I had about you last night, you do something really unconscionable to me. You abuse me, attack me, you're terrible. And I come to see you the next day and yell at you for what you did to me last night, you would lock me up. Right? You would wonder if I had taken my medication this morning. Because you say, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Well, that's what happens when we get angry. We are blaming other people for the dis-ease that we feel. This doesn't mean that other people are not coming from their egos. It's simply saying, what does other egos have to do with me? What do other egos have to do with me? No matter what they've done, they are not responsible for my not feeling the love and the peace of God. That is always the bottom line.
So the only thing that we really need to do, in my belief, is that every time life presses our buttons, don't avoid it, don't resist it. Because resistance is just perpetuating the dream. It's embrace it, see that it's an opportunity for forgiveness. It's an opportunity for us to look and remember that the source of this is here.
I call it the joke book from God, because the Course says that a miracle is a correct perception. So it's basically saying if we have a correct perception, it's a miracle. So it's a Course in Miracles. You know, like if you jokers see it correctly, it's a miracle. So that's why we call it a Course in Miracles. And that is the truth. So, you know, it's funny. Jesus has a heck of a sense of humor. And people miss it. I think he has like that Jerry Seinfeld kind of dry wit. That's where when I read it, it's hilarious.
In effect, what we end up with are two gargantuan DVD libraries. Right? And we're all sitting as a mind in front of the screen. And to the left is this library of ego videos, or DVDs. Each and every one of them, some aspect of special relationships, some form of attack, guilt, abuse, suffering, and death. Right. On the other side is an equally large, because it's DVD for DVD, a whole collection, a library of Holy Spirit DVDs. These are the forgiveness DVDs. All of them have already happened. Right? We have no freedom about that. So the Course tells us that we are reviewing mentally what has already gone by. In other words, every single thing in the universe is deja vu. We've already seen it. We've already done it. We've already been there. What free will means in the context of the Course is the freedom to that we can choose what we will be experiencing at any given moment. And when we choose that DVD, we become the figures on that DVD, which would include, for example, our physical birth. And then a DVD for every single thought that has occurred in what we think of as our life. If I'm driving along and I come to a crossroads and I'm not sure if I should turn left or right, and I'm thinking, do I turn left or right? I've already done both. Because there are no original thoughts. Thoughts are simply DVDs recalled. And so I will choose one or the other because I can't choose neither. And once I choose to go left, for example, that sets into motion a whole other series of DVDs. So this is not determinism, as religious people tend to think of it, namely that God has predetermined what will happen. That's not the case at all. We wrote the script as one collective Son of God who believes He's separated. But what we do at free will is to choose which ones I will do. And so, for example, on a practical level, let's say one of the DVDs or set of DVDs I've chosen is that I will be abandoned. So my parents abandoned me at birth because they die. And then I get shunted from one foster home to another, to an adopted family, and on I've always been abandoned. And then I get abandoned by my friends and my lovers and my spouses and my children, and on and on and on. And I'm just reviewing mentally all these wonderfully luscious, painful DVDs which prove I'm not responsible. Someone else has done this to me. At some point I throw up my hands and I say, there must be another way. There must be another set of DVDs, there must be another way of looking at my life. At that point, that's the invitation to the Holy Spirit. He guides me to choose a DVD, the exact same one I'm just going through now, where I'm tempted to feel unfairly treated for the umpteenth time in my life, and suddenly He says, you know, there's another way of looking at this. And I suddenly get the idea. I don't have to perceive myself unfairly treated anymore.
Dear Alan, I've begun reading A Course in Miracles, and I'm realizing there is a better way to live my life. You are an incredible husband. You go out of your way to accommodate others, and it's one of the countless traits I admire about you. I'm really sorry that I've treated you the way I have, and at the same time, it feels like a blessing in disguise. I'm starting to really take a look at things. I realize that this is not at all who I want to be.
Relationships are the greatest opportunity to practice forgiveness, especially marriage and divorce. When I experienced the dream of divorce, I projected my ex-wife to lie, cheat, steal, and so much more. I wanted to be a victim and join with the ego in doing something out there to get even. As I focused on the right mind, I kept coming back to asking myself, what is the loving thing to do? As long as I came from this place, I somewhat gently navigated through the tar pits of divorce, and in the surrendering process, experienced what could be viewed as a divine awakening. That experience showed me firsthand that the people we create to be our greatest enemies are definitely our greatest opportunities to practice forgiveness and awaken.
And by changing your mind about the world out there, you will change your experience of being in the world.
And then it's projected, and who is it going to be projected on but the other people in our lives? Those are our special relationships. They're special because we see them as a means to satisfy our needs, but in truth, what they are projections of our own guilt onto someone else to say, you are the cause of my unhappiness. And that way I get to keep my individuality, my specialness, my separateness, and I get to blame someone else for it.
So you identify that person as being the personality that you think they are, and then it comes down to, well, we have special love bargains and special love relationships where we come to depend on that other person to perform a certain way, to do a certain thing, to behave a certain way, to fulfill kind of like fantasies at times. And by doing so, we think that everything is in place and that the special love relationship is going to endure. The truth is that all that we need to do at the same time that we're having those special love relationships is use forgiveness to look at them differently.
We're being asked to begin to step back and watch ourselves, watch how attracted we are to blaming others, watch how attracted we are to perceiving ourselves unfairly treated, watch how attracted we are to making our special relationships, our romantic partner, our boss, our child, our parent, the receptacles for our guilt.
We make the world with our belief. And with every belief that there is something wrong with us, we create an experience that will be the mirror for that belief. So, if I expect you to fulfill me, and I think there's something missing in me, it becomes quite obvious that what I expect you to provide is in me. And I'll never find it until I know that that's the only place I can look.
All of our upsets with others and what they're showing us are really an opportunity to look at the guilt that we've projected outside of ourselves. In other words, the purpose that the ego has for all of our relationships is to use them as a screen upon which to project our pain and misery and suffering, our guilt, in other words, and say, you're the cause.
There is nothing in our perception that cannot be used by the Holy Spirit to teach us the truth of ourself. And there is certainly no exception in this, in using special relationships to come to grips with the truth of who we really are.
I won't just stay in a situation that brings me no joy just because, well, this is for my own best interest. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people that stays in situations that they got a choice about changing because, well, if I don't learn this lesson, I've heard people say, well, if I don't learn this lesson in this relationship, I'm gonna learn it in another relationship, even though they're hating every second of the relationship they're in. It just seems to me it would be easier to give myself a fresh and clean perception. And this is the lesson of love. Well, hey, you know what? If you and I are going through a lot of pain and we can't get past our pain, the Course in Miracles says at the second level of relationship, two people come together, have a very intense teaching-learning situation and appear to separate because they've learned as much as they can from each other at the time. People who feel guilty about divorces or feel like they haven't had relationships that have been lifelong, and I remind them of the fact that it's actually more normal for people to come together and separate and come together and separate than it is to spend a lifetime in a relationship with somebody. So most people are kind of like putting themselves down about not being able to have one relationship that lasts forever. And they overlooking the obvious truth that that's not the natural way it operates, because there are more people who have many relationships that they grow through.
Lately, puppetry has been reminded of the weight of the world on people's shoulders. The baggage we all carry with us, from house to house, city to city, relationship to relationship, lifetime to lifetime. We like to give our baggage to others to carry for us. Here, puppetry, carry my baggage along with yours. Yuri, I have no desire or the need or want to acquire any more baggage, yours or mine. Clean out your closets. Clean out your mind. Look at what you actually have in your house. See how much of the stuff you have accumulated that you no longer need or want and don't even know you have, but you carry around just in case you might need it. Nonsense. For Buddha's sake, stop. Let go of this clutter that fills your mind.
If you forgive as you go along, then eventually you're going to undo the ego, be more in a condition of spirit, and because of that, what will happen is that the unconscious guilt that is in your mind will be healed by the Holy Spirit. And if that happens, it's ironic, but you're actually going to end up enjoying your special relationships more, not less, because as guilt is undone in the mind, then what happens is that you feel more free to enjoy everything.
Beneath the surface of that special love relationship is the expectation that someone else is going to make us happy, that we're not really responsible ourselves for our feelings or our happiness in our life. And as soon as that other person does not act the way that we think that they should, when they haven't filled the role that we have assigned them to fill, we now begin to blame them for our unhappiness. And this is what happens in every special love relationship eventually.
You see what you look for in this dream. If you want to see other dream characters challenging you to wake up or practice forgiveness, they won't disappoint you. And again, the way the Course defines forgiveness is simply taking back my projections I put onto others.
Because it's all one. It's my guilt that I project out, and it permeates and contaminates every relationship I have, even when I'm not aware of it. But when I choose to forgive and let go of the guilt, which means I let go of my belief in separation, that you and I are separate, then all of my relationships become holy.
Through forgiveness, through looking with my teacher at the dream and my interpretations of the dream, and forgiving, which simply means to look without judgment. It's a state of mind.
The Course teaches that the direction of the mind is always automatic. Its direction is determined by the thought system to which it adheres. So it's of great importance, and in fact, it's our only power to choose forgiveness and choose the Holy Spirit now. Don't wait. Do it now, get into the habit of doing it, and it can make all the difference in the world, both in terms of your immediate experience and also in the long-term direction of the mind and in the belief of what you really are and where you really are, which once again is nothing less than God.
There's a line in the text that says, "Who with the love of God upholding him would find the choice between miracles and murder hard to make." Who with the love of God upholding him, which occurs when we become right-minded, would find the choice between miracles and murder hard to make. All forgiveness does, all the miracle does, which is why the book is called A Course in Miracles, is bring the problem from the dream, from the world and body, back to the mind, so I could realize I made a mistaken choice, I could make a better one, and that's it. I will automatically choose the right teacher.
Forgiveness is simply seeing that what I think you're doing to me, or whoever it is out there that I'm blaming at the moment for my misery, that what I think you're doing to me has really not occurred. It's not forgiving you because of something you did. It's seeing that it never happened in the first place. It was all just projected and all imagined.
So the way we begin to change the way we see ourselves is to withdraw those judgments, and that process we call forgiveness. It's by looking at what we have judged in the past, recognizing that the effects of that judgment are not pleasing to us, are not bringing us peace or happiness, and therefore we would like to choose again. And the way we choose again is to forgive, to look at what we have judged in the past and simply say, I don't think I want to go there anymore. I want to see this differently. And that process is what opens us up to receiving the vision of the God Self, or accepting the vision of the God Self, to seeing something different than what we see through our ego's perception.
There's a beautiful part in A Course in Miracles where it tells you how you can be free of all of your upsets, of all of your distress, because they all come from judgments and our projection onto other people. The Course says, when you want to blame your brother for something, understand this: you're holding a sword above your head, and it will fall or be averted as you choose. So the person that you're seeing isn't really holding you in the prison of your unforgiveness. It's really yourself. You're only doing that to yourself on many levels, because there is only you, but also because in this world of projection where we think there's other people, when we try to project it outside of ourselves, it just increases. It doesn't do any good to project it onto someone else. It's funny when we think that we're not forgiving someone else, that we're hurting them. A good friend of mine used to say, it's really like if you don't forgive someone else, it's like setting yourself on fire and hoping the other person dies of smoke inhalation.
What is suffering? Who suffers? Where did all these words and language and questions come from? Let me just say this. You think too much.
When you look for peace in the world, you can only find it by changing the mind as you look at what appears to be the world. And as you do that, you realize you can choose to look peacefully on whatever the outer circumstances are in your life. That, however, is often easier said than done. The way you do it with A Course in Miracles is to continuously practice by watching the way you become disappointed, betrayed, upset, irritated, angry, etc. And as you're watching these thoughts arise within you, you remind yourself that there's another way of looking at this, and that's what the Course calls looking with the right mind.
Suffering's an interesting one, right? Suffering's, until we start waking up, we perceive still that suffering is occurring to us. That that it's all happening to us, that we are a victim, we're innocent, and it's the whole world is doing stuff to us. The truth of it is that, we suffer because of our own unconscious guilt. We suffer because of our own projections. We suffer because of our own judgment. Because we're not aware that, the projector's rolling in here, and all that we're seeing out there is nothing but a reflection of what's going on in here, right? And whilst we're not aware of that, we keep judging it out there and not looking at where the real cause is, which is happening in here. So suffering keeps occurring until we recognize that, uh-oh, I'm the only one who's projecting this. And so therefore the way out of that is forgiveness. It's forgiving all of our projections. It's the recognition that all it is us misidentifying who we are and believing that we are in fearful circumstances, forgetting that we are love, and seeking for safety where it's not.
And so what we do in order to try to maintain some sense of peace is we project that guilt. We can't project what we are, we can only project what we're not. And so we're trying to get rid of that false sense of ourselves, and we project it out onto others.
Sometimes you get people that say, well, if it's all a dream and it's all illusion, doesn't matter what we do, does it? Well, in a sense, it doesn't. But the thing is that all we're doing is extending our own suffering. And we'll get to know that from our own experience, right? Because some people say hypothetically, well, why don't I just go out and shoot somebody and, kill people and do all sorts of stuff? Go ahead. Knock yourself out, right? First of all, nothing in reality has happened, but in this dream, you are going to experience more suffering. And if that's what you need to do, well, go for your life.
The process of undoing all of the false beliefs that we had all of our lives, or lifetimes, okay? So in a nutshell, what it is, it's undoing the one cause of suffering. And the one cause of suffering, and it hasn't been until the last, say, 8 years or so that I've really I'm beginning to grasp that. And the one cause of suffering is the belief that we're all separate.
So we blame others to get rid of, to project outward that denied guilt. And it's as if the guilt begins to build up in our minds unconsciously. And so it is so painful that we project it onto others. We believe that there are others out there that are responsible for the guilt. If we can prove that someone else is responsible, then we are able to present to God, to our source, the face of innocence. And that relieves us from our guilt momentarily, but it's a vicious cycle because the relief that we experience through projection is very short-lived. And we all know how when we blow up at someone, when we are attacking someone, we feel momentarily relieved because we had before that felt unfairly treated, but that passes quite quickly because then we immediately feel guilty again. A Course in Miracles is asking us to step out of that cycle, which it calls sin, guilt, and fear, and to go back to taking responsibility again for everything that we think is happening to us out there.
It's like the default position of this whole reality we call life is -1. So all our life, we're out there plugging away in our formula 2 + 2, and we keep getting the answer 3. And we keep trying to make it work. It's not meant to work. And unfortunately, most of us only arrive at that after a great deal of suffering, after trying to make this dream work. All the time trying to fix things, having things set, because we don't like change. What we like to do is set everything up. And as soon as we turn our back and turn back, it's changed again. And we're out there trying to fix it. And so the more we believe that this is real, the more we try to make this real, and then the more we try and extract love and happiness and all these things out there in this dream and make it real, we will experience suffering, because the ego's mantra is seek and do not find.
And actually, to be even more precise, the cause of our suffering is not guilt, because how can what's non-existent be the cause of suffering? The cause of our suffering is our mind's belief in guilt. That's the problem. The separation from God can't be the problem. Guilt can't be the problem. The world can't be the problem. What doesn't exist can't be the problem. The problem is that our deluded mind has believed the lies of the ego.
It's like the whole script has changed since I began reading the course. I talked to Alan this morning, and you know, I don't know where the words came from, but I told him that I had been using him to satisfy my own needs, trying to fix something that wasn't broken.
Seeing what the ego is up to doesn't make it disappear instantly, unfortunately. I wish it were so easy. Often it hides out for a bit, and then when you're least expecting it, and you're not paying attention, it's right back to work causing suffering in your life. It's great at telling you it's leaving, and then as you turn your back, it sneaks back around, puts its arm around you and says, hey, I can help you with this problem. But the way the ego deals with any problem is by changing the outer world.
You know, many students ask me, they say, Papaji, why are we here? What is my purpose in life? Who are we? Why do we do what we do and say what we say? What are words? What is language? What is this identity we are so attached to? Who is attached? Who wants to know? Just enjoy your life. Here, now. This is it. And I have no freaking idea why we are here. It is all one big mystery. Kind of crazy, yes?
What we call an ego perception is a way of seeing, a way of thinking that is based upon the belief that there's something wrong with us.
The ego is this mistaken identity. It's the me that we think we are, right?
You know, you don't have to struggle to be what you already are. You already are the same as God. You already are this perfect spirit that is immortal and invulnerable. All that you have to do is undo the false you, undo the ego, and eventually the experience of the real you will be there, you know, for you. If you get down to that last layer of ego and you undo it, then eventually the experience of your perfect oneness with your source or God or whatever you want to call it is going to be there as a permanent reality. So that's a beautiful approach. It's a classic approach. It's not the approach that everybody uses, but it's definitely the approach of both Buddhism and A Course in Miracles.
None of this is real, and the ego thought system is not real at all, and that there's only one real part of our mind, and that is the part of our mind that remembers the real, true, whole love that we are.
Which is what the role of the miracle is, which again is why this is called A Course in Miracles, is to tell us the problem is not the dream, not the ego thought system, either as is expressed in the world or in our mind. The problem is that our decision-making mind chose to believe in it. And because we chose to believe in it, we can now choose not to believe in it and to choose the right-minded thought system of correction. So again, the ego is literally nothing. In fact, in the clarification of terms, which is like an appendix to the teacher's manual, it says, what is the ego? And it says nothing. Where is the ego? Nowhere. So again, the problem is not the ego or its thought system. The problem is our belief in it.
This free will we think we have, I mean, all it wants to do is it wants to have, it wants to get, it wants to become, and above all, it wants to avoid what it thinks pain is, what suffering is, okay? So in a nutshell, it's always seeking pleasure, and it's always seeking to avoid pain. The problem is, it's insane. Seek and do not find, that's the ego's mantra. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to continue to get ourselves in a rut. We're going to continue to totally be distracted or allow distraction to come over and take us away.
I told Alan I didn't know what I was doing as a wife most of the time, but nothing can change our love. The love he is, I mean. The love we are.
To realize that we are not the ego. We are the decision maker, and we have a choice, and we have a part of us that does remember what we truly are and is capable, when we choose it, of undoing the ego thought system and leading us back home to the love that we are. And watching what we're experiencing and watching whenever we get triggered by something that we believe is out there. And to recognize that, to begin to recognize that as the voice of the ego, and to begin to understand that that voice that runs us, that 24/7 broadcast, that 24/7 rant, is not something that we have to choose for, that we can choose again for the wholeness we are, for a memory that we already have. And it's so easy to do that once we understand that the voice of the ego brings us enormous pain, and the voice of the Holy Spirit brings us enormous solace.
The ego, which is coming from separation, never really tells the truth. It only tells what it needs to tell to manipulate and get its way and make it sound like it could be the truth. So if you're going to communicate, make sure that you communicate from your true self, from being inspired by being in touch with Spirit when you start your communication.
The interpretation of dreams leads to the understanding of the activities of the unconscious mind. Right? That's the line that Jesus took, and in fact made that line the whole basis of A Course in Miracles. Because whether you know it or not, Jesus was a Freudian. The whole thought system of the ego in the Course is directly based on the work of Freud.
We had this moment today. It was almost like I forgot where or who we were. I didn't want to fix him or change him. When I'm right-minded, happiness seems to be all around me.
The Course is teaching us by catching ourselves again and again in the act of projecting to begin to understand that changing anything out there, changing anything in the illusion is never going to bring me happiness. And in fact will just plunge me deeper into the dream. What will bring me happiness is sticking with trying to change my own mind and heal my own mind. And we do that through the process of forgiveness.
If you want to help the world, if you want to fix the world, fix yourself, help yourself.
And what we can do is collapse time. So we can collapse our suffering time here, right, by taking every opportunity that we can to either extend love or offer forgiveness. Well, the offering of forgiveness is really a selfish act, because who else is there to forgive? There's nobody else in the room. So every opportunity that we have where our buttons are being pressed or where we're expressing a judgment, those are our opportunities to collapse time. All of those opportunities offer us the ability to remember that there's nobody else in the room. There's only me and my projections here, and every time I'm offering forgiveness, what I'm doing is reclaiming some part of the real person that I am, the real self, and in that sense, collapsing time. Now that means that we're still here in the dream, but we can experience then the happy dream. We can have a ball here. We can have fun here. It's shown me that all those fears and insecurities that I so identified with and embarrassingly treasured, you might even say, those weren't part of me at all. And I discovered that I could let all of that go with the help of the Holy Spirit and find that what was left was what I had always believed in. That what was left was this sense of love, this sense of playfulness, this sense of joy.
And it looks like we have a million problems, but really there's only one problem, and the problem is that we imagine that we're separate from each other and from perfect love and that we can be damaged or destroyed. That's really our only problem.
That we really can trust, and that surrender is the key, surrender and acceptance of what is, to fall into the safety of the arms of not knowing. It's just totally upside down. We think, the ego thinks, it needs to know before it acts. No, we don't.
Trying to change the world without changing the cause is an endless remodeling project. And I always love that phrase because it makes us realize that whether we're trying to change the world, the environment, our relationships, as long as we're trying to deal with the behavior, which is the effects, we're not changing anything. We're just kind of moving the pieces around in a different way and hoping that we'll get a different result.
Happiness comes when you learn to have fun with your life. Using the Course's tool of forgiveness doesn't mean you can't enjoy the ride along the way. You can actually play with this practice because this is how you learn to smile and love along this journey.
If your outer world isn't reflecting a world filled with love, it's because you haven't chosen love in your mind. The circumstances never matter in choosing love because it's all happening within you.
He's just trying to get us to the point that we will let ourselves be helped. And that all of this is just to, for you so insane, I got to give you 1,122 pages just to get you to the point that you will let me help you. Think about that. That's hilarious, you know, that it takes all of this just to get us to treat ourselves right, or just let other people be.
I think the biggest thing we all search for, whether we're conscious of it or not, is love. Love's what we search for. We want love. We want it from our parents, we want it from our kids, we want it from our partners, we want it from the world, we want validation, we want approval. I mean, that's what we think love is. And we so want that. And in fact, if we really were to do some radical self-inquiry, if we looked at it, we'd find that most of what we do, if we were game enough to go to the root of it all, would be because we're seeking this thing that feels like love. We want that, right? Our lives are empty until we get it. And the sad fact is that most of us in this lifetime will never get love, not the love that we're really searching for.
The Course addresses the mind as the cause of all change. And it is here that we find the challenge of undoing those misperceptions that we hold of ourselves and of each other, so that we can more clearly find that peace and that love that then becomes the cause, and the effects then in our own life change.
There is nothing other than perfect love, wisdom, and compassion. And what happens to us when we're trying to fix things in the physical world, in the world of form, and it never works. It always falls short. It always falls apart.
Only I have power over my mind. And if I don't experience the love and the peace of God, it's not your fault. No matter what you have done, it is not your fault. If I do not experience the love and the peace of God, it's because I have thrown that love and that peace away, judging them as not as nearly as important to me or as valuable as my own sense of personal identity. So rather than accept responsibility for this decision, I project it onto you and I say, you've done this to me. So one of the famous lines in the Course in terms of its definition of forgiveness is that we forgive someone for what he or she has not done to us, not what they have done to us. To come back to the central point here is that if you really knew and believed the world were an illusion, you would not see anyone as separate. Because what the world is an illusion means is that God's reality of perfect oneness is the truth, which means everyone here is part of that oneness. So how could you do anything that would hurt anybody? How could you do anything that would be unkind? The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite, meaning there is no fear. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite, which then means that fear does not exist, the ego does not exist.
So it's like the finish line becomes death. That is not the finish line, right? It's better to die to who we think we are before who we think we are dies. So why should we do something while we're here if it's all an illusion? Because we want to have fun. That's why. Because we want to experience love here, right now. And we can.
The bottom line is, just simply being here in a body, in a world, is resistance to love. And we're not talking about the love that we have come to associate here in the world, but love meaning the oneness of heaven.
There is no ego present. There is only love. There's no fear, there's nothing to defend, there's nothing to attack. And it's just the most miraculous thing to discover what real love is, and that it exists outside of any form or structure that this world would impose upon us.
What Jesus then says right after that passage is that don't let theology delay you, seek only the experience. that don't try to understand what can't be understood, but when you have the experience of love to which this course leads you, within that experience of love, you will, which is non-dualistic, which is that of perfect oneness, you will know that the tiny mad idea could never have happened, and therefore it did not happen, and then you wouldn't even ask the question.
I'm so grateful for A Course in Miracles now. I still get triggered by events and people in my life, but when I do, I recognize the only problem is when I choose the ego mind rather than choose to turn it over to Holy Spirit. It takes the charge out of the whole thing. I know now I always have a choice. And I have moments, honestly, when it's as if I forget my lines and I can actually remember it's only a dream.
Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.
It's like my good buddy Tony Parsons once said. Stop asking why and just sit back and enjoy the ride. Just be sure to wear your seatbelt so as not to get a ticket. Very expensive. Yes? Namaste.
One of the questions people sometimes ask about the Course is, oops, was that Jesus? I said something wrong. I'm disqualified?
Or yes, I can very much. My name is Guru Tamananda. I'm a tantric teacher. I would like to share with you my secrets today. Or maybe tonight. Maybe all day. And all night.
What was the question? What was the question?
Yep.
Anybody?
Yep.
Why don't you give me the answers and then I'll figure out what the question is.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I can give it to you.
All
I'll
right.
give you the answers and you guess the
All right.
questions. Well, the best thing to do is watch Leap movie. Okay, what's the question? Hold on, you want number 2? Here's the answer. Well, the best thing to do is watch Leap movie.
That is the best answer we've ever gotten to that question, right there.
What was he saying?
Can I go now? Can I go now? Can I have a brownie?
Yes, you get a brownie for that.
And seeking for safety where it's not. It's very difficult for me. I'm so used to interacting with in a workshop setting that it's so I just keep talking.
I gave the right answer that time?
You did.
As you guys know, I mean, I don't tell jokes because I'm a very serious teacher, can't you tell?
Hold on, no, everyone hold on to each other. Put your arms around each other like you're on a log ride or something.